Hello everyone, Tmmgamer here, and today I have the pleasure of bringing you another one of my football talk videos. Now today's video I'm going to be focusing on the Champions League quarterfinals, because obviously, as most of you guys will know, this week has seen the conclusion of the Champions League quarterfinals, and the 4 teams confirmed going through to the semi-finals have all been sewn up. And obviously this is a really big occasion in world football. This is the premier club tournament in world football, goes far to say. So obviously there's a lot of interest about this, and all of the 4 games are interesting in their own way. Let's start obviously with the first games on the Tuesday. We had Borussia Dortmund versus Real Madrid and Chelsea versus Paris Saint-Germain. And Borussia Dortmund, we'll start with them. I felt they were really unlucky against Real Madrid. I went to the pub with a mate and we just had a few pints and we watched both the games side by side. And I have to say, Dortmund played exceptionally well. They had a couple of chances to score that 3rd goal to take it into extra time. And for me, I thought they were really unlucky because they're such a slick team, and Dortmund, they lose players every year. They lost Kagawa, who was voted German Player of the Year. Then they lost Mario Götze, and this summer they're losing Robert Lewandowski. But every single season they come back and they look threatening. And they're, Jurgen Klopp's one of the best managers in world football right now, one of the best young managers, absolutely fantastic. And they really did show Real Madrid's weaknesses, because Real Madrid have glittering talent. Obviously, Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't playing on Tuesday night, which was a big loss for them. Obviously, he's been the best player in the world over the last 12 months. He would grace any team. So obviously having him unavailable was a big blow. But even so, I think Borussia Dortmund really did expose some of the weaknesses of Real Madrid. They at times were incredibly shaky. Huge Marcelo error for the first goal, terrible header back. Casillas, a few mistakes, flaps at a couple of things. They aren't as solid as they need to be at the back. And when you see all of this money that gets spent, when they just really should go out there and buy an absolutely awesome centre-back to go alongside Ramos, or to someone incredible at the back to shore themselves up, because then they really would be an absolutely outstanding team. But it was a really fun game. It was open, it was end-to-end. Dortmund went out and attacked it, and that's what they had to do. They had to go out and give it a go, and then in the end of the day they were a bit unlucky, in my opinion, not to go through. The second match, featuring Chelsea, obviously the first English team in the competition at this point. Chelsea versus PSG. Chelsea went into that game, obviously 3-1 down from the first leg, needing to score 2 goals to win. 2-0 win would see them through, and that's exactly what they did. And I had to say, I did fear for Chelsea. I was talking about the game with some friends on the day, just before it started, and I was backing PSG to at least score, because they have so much attacking talent. And again, missing Ibrahimovic, big loss for them on the night. But when you look at players like Lucas Moura, Cavani, Lavezzi, just those 3, they brought Javi Pastore on. Javi Pastore didn't even start that game. That is just an incredible array of attacking talent. But once again, Jose Mourinho just shows that when it comes to the big nights and the big matches, he knows how to win games. He knows how to motivate teams. And I thought Chelsea played well. PSG had a couple of chances, but it wasn't really out of Chelsea's control at any point. I always felt they had it in them to win. And obviously, it took a little bit longer than they would have liked. Demba Ba scoring quite late on. Again, Demba Ba, player who's really not had much to do this season. Obviously, Jose Mourinho has been very public about his desire to buy a new striker and his unhappiness with the current crop of strikers he has at the club. But at the end of the day, when Chelsea really needed a goal, Demba Ba was in the right place at the right time. Yeah, he scuffed the finish in, but he was in the right place. He got that goal, and I think Chelsea deservedly went through. And you've got to be very pleased if you're Chelsea, because Paris Saint-Germain are an outstanding team now. I can remember 5-10 years ago, PSG were awful. They were a nothing club in France. So many, like Lyon, were the major force in French football, but now that's completely flipped. Obviously, a lot of money's gone into that club, and teams like Monaco as well, but they definitely have an outstanding team. And for Chelsea to prevail, especially after that dodgy first leg late on when they conceded that 3rd goal, I personally thought that would be killer, but they came back and played very well. And the good thing for them as well, they did it with Eden Hazard getting a knock early on and having to come off, and I thought Andre Schürrle played very well when he came on. David Luiz in the midfield role too. I think he's a much better midfielder. He is a much better midfielder. If you play him alongside a midfielder who has a bit of defensive responsibility, or like a hard worker, someone like a Matic or a Miras in that team, he's an incredibly effective player. He really, really is. So I like seeing David Luiz in that role. I think Terry and Cahill are definitely better centre-backs than him, but David Luiz's technical ability is absolutely fantastic, and seeing him in midfield really does make a difference to me for that side. You know, him and Matic and Ramirez are good defensive midfielders, are certainly good central midfielders, and I like seeing Jose Mourinho play him there. But again, a very, very pleasing performance on the day. Controlled, you know, they didn't panic, even though the clock was winding down, and you know, traditionally teams in that position would begin to just to lump it forward, and Mourinho threw strikers on, but there was always a game plan. It wasn't just a hack and hoof, it was always, you know, thought out, and in the end I think they got the goal they deserved to go through. So, you know, Real Madrid and Chelsea went through from the Tuesday games. I think Real Madrid were a little bit lucky, but you know, if you win the first leg 3-0, you're going to set yourself up, and going to Dortmund is a very, very tough ask indeed. So pretty solid from them, I suppose, and Chelsea did very, very well to come back from that. So that's Tuesday's games. Moving on to Wednesday, we had an absolute, well, I'm not going to say a shock, but you know, the shock came for me in the Atletico Madrid-Barcelona game in seeing how Barcelona played, because they reverted to long ball. And one thing you can always say about Barcelona normally was that, yeah, they might lose a couple of games, but they always had their distinctive style. They always had their passing, their high pressing, their, you know, very, very technically gifted midfielders would control the ball, and Messi would glide around, and it would all be very, very fluid and beautiful. And you know, even if they lost the game, they'd still have that identity. And yesterday really did concern me about Barcelona, because for me they showed that they've lost their identity. You know, they had Guardiola come in, and now they've got Martino. For me, it's not working at Barcelona. I think they do need a proper world-renowned manager at that football club to instill the philosophy again. You know, Barcelona have been a little bit unlucky with their managers. Obviously, they tried to get Villanova in, and you know, fell ill. Very, very unfortunate. But you know, the guy's got to put his personal health first. You know, he has to get well. He had to give up his job there and move on. And obviously, they got Martino in, and it hasn't really worked. Barcelona, for me, have been on the decline for a little bit of time now. You know, they've had several players like the Puyols, the Xavis, the Valdezes. You know, these have been people who've been a core part of this team for a long time, and they're beginning to fade away. They're beginning to not be the same force that they once were. Barcelona have been crying out for a good centre-back for about 5 years now, and the reason why they got away with it was because they kept 75% possession in games. So they didn't need that guy, that awesome centre-back. But now they've got to a stage where they aren't as dominant in world football anymore. A lot of other teams have caught up with them. Teams like Bayern Munich, you know, like I mentioned before, a lot of big teams in Europe are spending money, like the PSGs. You know, Chelsea have always been spending money, the Manchester Cities, and eventually they're getting slowly chipped away at and overtaken. And Barcelona, this is a huge summer for them now, because theoretically they couldn't win La Liga. They've already been knocked out of the Champions League. You know, how bad a season could this be for Barcelona? It could be a disaster for them. Do they get rid of their manager in the summer? I don't know. I think Barcelona are a club that like a bit of stability. They're not as, you know, cutthroat as Real Madrid are in terms of getting rid of their managers, but the expectation at that club is massive, and the reason why it's massive is because this squad of players pretty much dominated world football for a prolonged spell. You know, a good 4 or 5 year spell. Barcelona were clearly the best team in Europe, clearly, and you don't see that too often. You know, you see teams go on good spells, but there's always very stiff competition. For me, Barcelona were far and away the best team in the world for a long, long time, and that hasn't happened anymore. They've regressed a little bit. You know, they spent an astronomical amount of money on Neymar, and he hasn't lived up to the expectations. You know, they were pinning a lot on Neymar, and he hasn't done that much. If you compare him to Gareth Bale at Real Madrid, you know, Gareth Bale has really begun to, you know, show his potential at that club. He's started to get a lot of assists, really contribute, and he's begun to, you know, fit in with the rest of his teammates very, very well. Because when he first came in, it sort of looked like he was a little bit, you know, awestruck playing alongside Ronaldo and playing for Real Madrid. And it's obviously understandable, but he's now come in and he's really begun to do fantastically well, and Neymar hasn't. And you might say, oh, well, you know, Madrid spent a lot more on Bale than Barca did on Neymar. If the stories are true about all of this extra money, you know, that Barca threw at the family and all of these extra stuff, the hidden expenses, that might not actually be the case. You know, Neymar was an incredibly expensive transfer, and he hasn't played very, very well. And again, like I mentioned earlier, Barcelona are crying out for centre-back. They need a centre-back. It's just, you have to buy one. You have to buy one now. I mean, the transfer embargo is coming on Barcelona as well, which is going to make it incredibly difficult over this Neymar transfer. Now, obviously, Barcelona are going to appeal that, but if that embargo gets put in force for 2 years and Victor Valdez still leaves the club, all of a sudden they've got Pinto in goal week in, week out, who isn't exactly a regular, reliable deputy or a first choice. And then you've got the same problems. You've got the defensive weakness. You've got an ageing midfield. You've got Carlos Puyol leaving in the summer as well, which is huge. Another player leaving that football club. And Barcelona are beginning to come apart slowly, bit by bit, at the seams. And it's very worrying if you're interested in that football club. So they're always a team that produces fantastic youths. There's no doubt about that. But youths take a while to mature. You know, you can't just throw in an 18-year-old kid and expect him to be top notch, top drawer, week in, week out. You know, you can throw young players in and they will do a great job for you, but they can't play well 50 games a year. And if you're Barcelona manager, that's what you need, you know, because you want to go deep in the Liga, you want to go deep in the Spanish Cup, you want to go deep in the Champions League, and to need that, you're going to need players who will play over 40 games a season very well for you. And Barca, I don't feel, have that in the droves required to really challenge at the highest level in Europe anymore. And that transfer embargo is really going to hurt them. It really, really is. So, you know, that was a massive surprise for me, just to see the complete disintegration of Barcelona on the night. It was only a 1-0 defeat, and you can say that perhaps on another day they would have won, but for me, it's worrying. It really, really is worrying. But again, Atletico Madrid haven't lost to Barcelona all season. Winning over 2 legs, very, very good performance from them again. Got the goal early and just were tight. And, keeping a clean sheet against Barcelona is no mean feat, even with the problems that they have at the moment. So fair play to Atletico. They are definitely a dark horse this tournament. No one really backed them to go deep, but every single round they always put in a good performance. And it's the same in the Liga. People are saying, oh, they're going to fall off, but every single week they continually stick around, put good performances in, and actually look like a quality team. And in Diego Costa, they've got one of the informed strikers in world football at the moment, which is always key. If you're scoring goals, if you're keeping clean sheets against Barcelona, you're always in with a chance. So fair play to them. And the final game of the quarterfinals was Bayern Munich Manchester United, and I did a prelim video on this game saying it was a good tie for Manchester United because the pressure was not on really against, in my opinion, still the best team in Europe at the moment, Bayern Munich. And that's how it really turned out. They went to Munich, they scored first for a little bit of time. It looked like the fairy tale was on, but then Bayern's quality shone through and really propelled Bayern through. In the end, comfortably, but I tell you, as soon as Patrice Evra scored that goal, comfortable would have been the last word on the minds of those Bayern fans and players. So, for me, if you're a United fan, you've got to be happy with how you've played. I mean, you've got a very creditable draw at home against the best team in Europe, and then you went away from home and you gave it a go, you threatened, you scored a goal, and at the end of the day, world-class players knocked you out. That's what happened. So I think, as a United fan, you've got to be pleased. Unfortunately now, the dream of winning the Champions League and qualifying for next season is over. And that means it's going to be very, very difficult in a transfer window. I saw an article, I think it was from Gary Neville, saying that, getting knocked out of the Champions League means that, it wouldn't be the end of the world. United will still be able to attract players. And to a certain extent, that's true. Obviously, United are a fantastic club with a very, very rich history. And there's no way they're going to be in the doldrums forever. Obviously, that's going to be appealing for a lot of players. But the very top-notch players, which is the sort of player United need, because they've got too many Ashley Youngs at that football club. They need someone world-class to come in. If you get 2 offers for the same amount of money from Manchester United and Manchester City, who do you go to now? You go to Manchester City. If you get the same offer from Manchester United and Bayern Munich, who do you go to? You go to Bayern Munich. And this is the thing that's beginning to worry me. Champions League football is a massive draw in terms of the finances it gives you, in terms of the pulling power it gives you in the transfer market. Because you can say, not only am I a club with all this finance and all of this rich history, but we can give you this great football. Week in, week out, Champions League, Premier League ambitions. Can United offer that anymore? Can they offer that right now? The answer is no, they can't. And that's going to be a major, major problem for me over the summer, because there's no doubt United need to invest in a new squad. 4 or 5 players of top quality need to come into that team, because there's too many Tom Cleverleys and too many Ashley Youngs in that team for the likes of Wayne Rooney, Van Persie to carry. And a lot of players are going to be leaving. Vidic, Evra, Rio Ferdinand is firmly past it now, I think, in my opinion, in terms of the highest level. He'll still do a job for a club. He could still do a job. But is he going to win you a Champions League? No chance, not anymore. So there's a lot of work required at United. And for me, it might take them a little bit of time to get back to the quarterfinals of the Champions League again. It's going to be a 3 or 4 year process, in my opinion, depending on how much money the Glazers are prepared to give David Moyes in the summer. So that's Manchester United. But again, as always, finished with Bayern Munich. They are the team to beat. They are still the team to beat. Absolutely outstanding team. World-class players through and through. They were missing some outstanding players as well on the night. Schweinsteiger, the key example. And they still, at the end of the day, confidently overcame a very, very stubborn Manchester United team. And you've got to be very, very wary if you're another team in this competition. For me, Bayern Munich are the favourites. Every single other team has a chance. I mean, no bad teams get through to the semi-final of the Champions League. If you're in the semi-final of the Champions League, you have a realistic chance of winning that tournament, no doubt. But for me, you can't look past Bayern Munich. Their starting 11 is the best, and their squad is the best. So they could have 3 or 4 serious injuries to key players and still field an outstanding team. And I don't think anybody else in the competition can really say that. So for me, Bayern are still the team to beat. But again, Real Madrid, Chelsea, Atletico, they have a chance. Of course they have a chance. I mean, Chelsea have had an underdog story Champions League win in very, very recent memory. Atletico were a tough team. They're combative, they score goals, and they're solid. They always take, they could snick an away draw and then take a team back to Madrid and beat them. There's no doubt that could happen in the semi-final. And then you go to a final and anything can happen on the day. So there's no doubt any of these teams could win. But if you're forcing me to put money down, if it's my own personal money, I can't look past Bayern Munich at the moment. But once again, guys, thank you so much for listening to the video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'll be very, very interested to hear your opinions on the quarterfinals and your favourites for the trophy. But for now, thanks for watching and have a great